Welcome back to Boomer's Playground, and today's going to be a short video on kind of basic looping with JavaScript. So your first basic loop is going to be a traditional for loop. So let's get a string here. We're just going to keep it easy. And then we'll do an array as well, because these are kind of the two things that you loop over a lot is strings and arrays. And the array doesn't have to be an array of letters. It can be an array of numbers. It doesn't really matter. And so your traditional for loop is going to look something like this. So you're going to have for, you're going to do brackets, or parens, and then brackets. And then you have three things that you need to put in the parens. And you can easily just go to some documentation. And here you'll see we have the step, or this is called the iterator. So this is kind of where you start. This is the checker or the conditional to see if you should keep going. And then this is what happens after the code is run. So it actually works a little weird. So the first thing that happens is this runs and we'll say, okay, cool, step equals 0. Then we run this one, is 0 less than 5? That's true. So we run this code, and then after this code is run, we jump up here and we add 1 to step. So this plus plus is the same as saying, is the same, oh crap, I broke this. Is the same as saying step equals step plus 1. So you'll see this all the time. That's just add 1 to whatever the thing is. So in this case, it's step. So we add to that. So now step is 1. And then we check here. We say, hey, is 1 less than 5? It is. So we run the code. Then we come up here again. We add 1 to it. Step is now 2. Is 2 less than? And you keep going until this condition is false, or you do a return in the for loop. So that's kind of the basics of just your traditional for loop. So what you'll see a lot is you'll see people don't use step. Step was just to kind of show you what these things are, which you almost always see and then so we're starting I at 0. We'll do while I is less than, and we'll do a.length, and then we'll do plus, and then in here we can just console log I and a.I, so we can see what I is, and we can see what the value of the ith index of a is. And you'll see we get HOME. And so one thing I want to bring up here is you'll see we do a.length and we do less than. We did not do less than or equal to. And the reason for that is if you ask a regular person who has no programming experience to count this string, or you would just say, hey, count this word, what would they do? They would say 1, 2, 3, 4. And so when you do length, it gives us the human readable number, which is 1 more than the actual index we have access to. So if you ask a programmer the same question, well, depending on what language they use, but most start at 0. If you're like, hey, count this string, most programmers are going to say 0, 1, 2, and 3. And that's because all but like a couple programming languages that I've read about start counting at 0. So with this less than a.length, we're making sure that when we get to 4, we don't try and access the 4th value of a because it doesn't exist. And so this seems, you may be thinking like, oh, well, who cares? Like we just got undefined, whatever. But there are a lot of situations where this could break your project or break your website. And so it's really important that we make sure to do less than. And sometimes you'll see people do this. They'll do less than or equal to, and then they'll minus 1 here. That's perfectly acceptable, but it's just extra steps. And I've been programming long enough that once you get like a couple years in, you do the least amount of steps you possibly can for this. And we'll even get to a point in the next video that I'm going to do where we don't even use these traditional for loops. And in my company, or not my company, but the company I work for, I don't think we have a single standard for loop for this reason. They're called one-off errors. So if we did this, if we accidentally put equals, we end up breaking it because we were one off. We had one extra thing we were looking for. So that's if you ever hear the term one-off error, that's what it's referring to. So, and we can do the same with the array. I think we had the array of b. Yeah, so, let I equals 0, I is less than b dot length. And the length thing is the exact same as it was with the previous string. So same with like the one off and the length giving us one more than there actually is for indexes. And what did we do? We did console.log, we'll do I, and we'll do b of I. And here we get that, which is awesome. And then again, just to show you that it'll break, here we get this undefined there. This undefined at the end of everything I'm doing is the default return for a function. So don't ignore these ones. This is just kind of the default response when you're in the console. It's not the same as this one here. So that's one thing you have to get used to with the console. Console's amazing, but that's one thing to kind of not worry about, but just keep in mind. So that's the first one, just traditional for loops. That's probably one of the first loopings you'll learn in almost any programming languages. The syntax might be a little different, but the idea is the same regardless. So the next one that is, I don't want to say it's new, but I just learned about it like a year ago, and it's the for of. And so this is really nice because we don't have to worry about that one-off error. We don't have to worry about like, okay, well, how long is it? Do I have to worry about it being equal to the length or maybe one less than the length? So here we just say for, and then we create a temporary variable. This right here could be named anything. And then you do of, and you do whatever the array, or even you can do this on strings as well. Whatever the array or string is, and then this element is going to be each item in that array or even in that string. So if we do, I'll just do home to keep it simple. So here we can do str, and you'll see we still get HOME. And so the nice thing about this is, again, we don't have to worry about how long str is or array1 is. We don't care. The for of loop is going to handle that for us, and it's only going to loop over the amount of items in that thing, whether it's an array or a string. So these are really, really nice. Again, the benefit is you just don't even have to think about it, right? So you have, we'll just do E. Have this. I mean, that's huge, right? Like, I don't want to, like, oh God. So instead of doing like for let I blah, 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 we can easily just do for const. And again, remember this thing right here can be whatever, we can call it whatever we want. We can do, I live in the valley, so we'll do Phoenix. And we'll do of, and then remember, this has to be whatever we're looping over, so E. And then we can just do console.log E. And you'll, I did console.log E, which is, E is the string. I needed to do Phoenix because Phoenix in this instance is going to be the temporary variable. So let's do that. And then here you'll see we just get each thing through that string. And just to show you guys that we can name it whatever we want, let's just do, we'll just do YouTube. And as long as you use the same name in here, you're fine. And you'll see we get that. And so you can even do things with this, right? So let's just do Z, and we'll just do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's say you had to double everything in here. Like you could do, for let I equal 0, I is less than z dot length, I plus plus, and then we'll come down here and we'll console.log, and we'll do I.2. And you'll see here we get what we want. We get 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And in this instance, you guys are probably thinking like, well, I guess I really don't see the benefit. And that's a fair question or assessment. But when you get into bigger problems, like this becomes a very big deal. That was a lot of typing. That was a lot of kind of thinking when we could have just done this. Num.2, and we get the exact same result. And again, in this specific instance, you guys are probably thinking, again, like, who cares? But when you're in a bigger project or you're doing more complex looping, this is huge. So these are kind of the two main looping methods over strings and arrays. And there's one more, which is for in, which is for objects, which is awesome because before you had to do like this really wonky way. So like, let's just create an object real quick here. Let's just do T. We have our object and we'll just do name and we'll do boomer. Age will be 100. Whatever, that's fine. Actually, let's give it a little more just so we have something to play around with. So we got that. We'll do sex is male. Married is false. And that should be good. So again, I don't know when this, I wonder if this says when it came in. Yeah, well, yeah, it's, I want to say it's pretty new, but who cares? So here, really easy way to use this. We have our object. We do the same thing, but instead of for of, we do for in. And then this element is going to be the key. So objects are key value pairs. So A is the key, 1 is the value. B is the key, 2 is the value. C is the key, 3 is the value. So you'll see right here, this is saying object.a, because again, A is the key, will give us 1. Object.b, which is the key, will give us 2. So let's check this out here. So before you'd have to do something like this, you would have to do, gosh, what was it? I think it was it was object.keys. You'd put the object in there and then so object.keys, this would give you an array of all the keys. And then you would do like a for each, but we won't get too deep into that. That will be the next thing. The next video I'm going to talk about, well, the next video is going to be nested loops. And then after that, I'm going to talk about methods like for each, filter, map, and all that kind of stuff. So what we can do now is we can do for const, and we'll just do a, again, just to show you can really name these things kind of whatever you want in T. And let's see what A is. And so you'll see A is the key of each item in here. So that's awesome. So how do we get the values? Because that's usually what you want is the values. So when you have an object, if you're using the same thing as the key, so we can do t.age and that will give us whatever that is. But let's say you're using a variable instead of the actual word. So we'll say like const p, and we'll just say is age. And you're like, oh, dude, just do t.p. Oh, sorry. T.p, like p is age, but we're going to get undefined. And that's because we're using a variable. We're not using the actual key value or the actual key here. So age, we could do t.married. And because married is the actual key name, we can use that. But if we're using a variable, we need to use the square brackets like this. So the reason that that's important is we're looping through this and A is going to be each key, but A is a variable. So we can't do we'll do const A in T. You would think like, oh, I'll just do t.a and we'll just do we'll just console.log that. And we're like, oh, what the heck? Why are we getting undefined? Well, again, A is a variable, so we have to do the square brackets. And well, you also have to type, right? Which I'm clearly bad at. And so here, since we're using this, you'll see we get boomer, 100, male, and false, which those are going to be the values of the object, which is awesome. And one thing to keep in mind is Chrome is gonna put these alphabetically, even though I named them in a different order. And even though if you look at the object, it will likely look the same every time. It's like T, you'll see it's name, age, sex, married, name, age, sex, married. It's not guaranteed to be in order, but that doesn't matter because the way you get the values is by the key, not by an index like there is in an array. So like when you're in, oh, did I have an array? I thought I had an array. When you're in an array, these will be in the same order every single time. And so it's easier to be like, oh, well, I know the 0th one, the first index, the second index, and third index. But with object, they're key value pairs. They're not numbered, so they may not always be in order. So that usually isn't a huge deal, but that's just something to keep in mind. Maybe it's one of those questions they ask you in an interview and they're like, oh, are objects always in the same order? Really doesn't matter. Kind of a dumb question, but it kind of helps to show that you understand the language or not. So those are going to be the three main ways to loop. We have our traditional for loop. We have our traditional, or not traditional, but we have our for of, which will work on strings and arrays. And then we have our for in, which will be on looping over objects. So the next video, I'm going to go over nested loops I cannot remember his name, but one of the guys that's been asking a lot of questions on the YouTube channel. So I'll go over that next because it is a little difficult. But if you guys had questions or comments, comments, or concerns, leave them in the comment section below. Otherwise, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.